you're good to go.
All right. Good afternoon. My name's James Pepper. I'm the chair of the Vermont Cannabis Control Board. Today is Wednesday, December 20th. It's 1:02 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. I wanted to quickly edit the agenda. On page 2, where we list the license applications we will be reviewing, we inadvertently listed all applicants under the heading staff recommendations for initial licensure. Only 2 of those applicants were applying for initial licensure this month. Those were Verdant Wisdom, an outdoor cultivator, and the Hidden Grove LLC, a retail establishment. All the remaining applicants were for renewals. These distinctions were published correctly in the email blast that we sent out on Monday. They just weren't correct on the agenda posted to our website. So I've asked the staff here to correct that and 2 of the typos that I noticed, and then repost it. So it should be posted correctly at this point. We had our 4th of the Act 65 working group meetings, which has been tasked with improving the medical program. The primary focus of this meeting was how the use of cannabis and cannabis products are communicated to patients and patient providers. We spoke with Dr. Linda Klumpers about a program that she's created called Canopy. Essentially, this is an evidence-based algorithm that, after filling out a basic questionnaire, matches a consumer's desired outcomes for using cannabis with the appropriate products. And then it also provides some additional information about modes of administration and dosing, as well as some well footnoted plain English educational information. We then reviewed the results of our most recent patient satisfaction survey and reviewed some of the preliminary recommendations that the board intends to include in its final report to the legislature. And we'll go through those later on in this meeting. I have a note here from our licensing team that there are an inordinate number of licensees that do not have accurate point of contact information in our licensing portal. This may seem like a small matter, but it really isn't. We only reach out when we have critical information that would impact your license or when we need to schedule an inspection. So from a practical standpoint, not keeping this contact information current means that our staff has to spend their most valuable resource, which is their time, trying to track you down. It's for that reason that this is a finable offense under Rule 4. The last thing that we want to do is waste our time issuing penalties for something like this. So I'd please ask everyone to take a moment, log into the portal, look at your most recent application, whether that's your initial application or a renewal, and check to see if the contact information listed is accurate, spelled correctly, and that it's for the person that should be receiving messages from the CCB licensing and compliance teams. If it's not accurate, please send your updated contact information to ccb.applications@vermont.gov. Once again, that's ccb.applications@vermont.gov. So on that note, why don't we go ahead and approve the minutes from our regular meeting on November 29th, 2023. You guys had a chance to look those over?
Yep.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, going down the agenda, I just wanted to share kind of our draft recommendations for the medical program. This report is again due on January 15th, 2024. So we have not submitted it yet. I'd love to, Julie and Kyle, get your comments on it. Obviously, we can change it before it's submitted. And whatever public comment we receive kind of later in the agenda would be helpful. So let me just share my screen if I can. Looks like I can. All right. And can you all see that all right?
Yep.
All right. So this is just kind of the basic executive summary about what's in the report, some introductory slides and some basic recommendations, which I'll just get right into. So just restating, what we were tasked with in Act 65, again, and just kind of looking at various ways to improve the medical registry. We had to meet no more than 4 times. We have to submit this report to the committees of jurisdiction on or before January 15th. And we had a few stakeholders that we were supposed to work with. All of the meetings were recorded, and so they're available on our YouTube page. I've got links to them in this report. Brief, just introductory slides about the evolution of the medical program in Vermont. Just some notes about the benefits of being on the medical registry. And then some numbers showing the kind of evolution and decline of the program. And then just a reminder, this is really for the legislature, that, while, there's some question about the ongoing viability of the program, the legislature has committed, when it initiated adult use, to keep the registry kind of available to patients and to kind of maintain patient access to medical products and services. We in turn, when we were first seated, heard from medical patients and caregivers and the dispensary owners, and we incorporated the feedback that we received into our mission statement. Here are the current locations of the medical dispensaries. So that's kind of just the basic background information for the legislature when they start to read this report. Recommendation number 1, we spent a lot of time looking at how other states have been able to remove politics from the decision of adding a new qualifying condition. And that is, well, I guess this first slide just kind of lays out which are the most common qualifying conditions in other states. And this is not a comprehensive list. There's a number of states that just say anything that a healthcare physician recommends cannabis for. There's a lot of kind of self-certifying that happens in certain states. I wanted to lay out again for the legislature, just refresh their recollection about who can recommend or who can qualify a patient for the medical cannabis program and what our current medical condition list qualifying conditions are. And then this lays out just some alternative approaches that other states have taken. So, a number of states, 12 states, have a non-legislative approval process, meaning that some third-party entity has been granted the authority to add new medical conditions, usually based upon a petition from a patient or a prospective patient. And the vast majority of them go to the Department of Health, but you can see here that some go to either a board of physicians. In Utah, there's something called the Compassionate Use Board, or they go directly to the Cannabis Regulatory Authority, like they do in New Jersey and Michigan and a few others. A number of states, 11, allow for the kind of healthcare professional to have the discretion to recommend that a patient in their care be part of the registry. So there's a list of those states there. So the recommendation is kind of an either or potentially both for the legislature would be to primarily authorize a healthcare professional that has some sort of specialized cannabis medical education. Again, most information about cannabis is not in the traditional medical curriculum when people go to medical school. So, we're thinking about creating a curriculum about cannabis. There's a number of programs in the state and outside of the state that do this already. So have a healthcare professional with specialized cannabis medical education recommend access to the Vermont Medical Cannabis Registry for a patient in their care, or take the approach of 12 other states and authorize a non-legislative entity, either the Cannabis Board or the Department of Health or some third-party board that's been created that includes patients and caregivers and medical professionals to, accept petitions and qualify new conditions. Recommendation 2 would be to authorize registered patients to utilize certain retail establishments tax-free. This is, certain. This would essentially be to create a medical endorsement for an adult use retail establishment that's willing to jump through certain additional regulatory hoops that are all aimed at kind of providing services and products to patients. So in order to get this endorsement, you would have to submit plans and execute plans for protecting patient confidentiality. That could be through curbside pickup, designated hours for patients, a reservation system, separate entrances or rooms for patients, delivery. You wouldn't have to do all of these things. You just have to find it, submit a plan for making sure that a patient that does want to maintain confidentiality can do so. Obviously, when you have when you're dealing with patients, there's a lot of, let's see if I can go back here. There's a lot of sensitive health information that's being shared. You need to have a plan for making sure that doesn't become public. There's a number of specialty products, I think, full spectrum products or high THC solid concentrates that either don't exist on the adult use side because they're prohibited or they don't have a real economic incentive to keep stocked. You need to submit a plan for how you're going to make sure that if a patient needs one of those products, that you have the ability to get it to them in a reasonable amount of time. And then also, providing individual consultation and education to patients about the use of medical cannabis and cannabis products. I think this is an important piece that the state needs to kind of step in and make sure that anyone who's interacting with patients, is getting evidence-based helpful information and not just, that these are vulnerable patients and they oftentimes need hand-holding. So recommendation 3 would be just generally improve access to medical products and services. The way that I see this is adding ulcerative colitis to qualifying conditions. Again, we could just add all inflammatory bowel diseases. I think we have Crohn's now, and ulcerative colitis is the other major category. So either kind of eliminate Crohn's, add all irritable bowel diseases, or just add ulcerative colitis. One or the other is fine. Extend the renewal term for chronic pain. I think every qualifying condition but chronic pain now has a 3-year renewal, and it seems that we should just add chronic pain to that list of 3-year renewals. Remove THC caps. Again, I kind of see this as if the legislature is not going to bolster the medical program and we start losing access there, then they need to make sure that the adult use system can at least supply the same products and services that exist on the medical program at adult use stores. So that would include removing THC caps. That would include a delivery license. We need to make it at least equitable, on the fee side of things to own a dispensary, which serves, 3,200 patients, as owning an adult use retail establishment, which has access to the entire 21 plus population. And then, I think we've been pretty transparent that we want to harmonize the adult use testing standards with medical testing standards. However, we also do not want to increase costs for patients. So it's, I think, a good recommendation that either the state lab, reference lab, cover the cost of that testing, or we find a way to subsidize it. So those are the kind of those recommendations. The final is improve patient and provider education. I really liked the presentation from Dr. Klumpers. I really liked Canopy. I liked how it not only the recommendations it gives not only are all evidence-based and supported and footnoted, but for we all know that the science is lagging very far behind when it comes to cannabis, which is a Schedule I controlled substance. So Canopy also has a whole education section that talks about some of the more cutting edge research that might not be, it might be preclinical, it might be on animals as opposed to humans, but it had everything about kind of the entourage effect and terpenoids and other flavonoids are all on that. It's just not, they don't appear in the specific kind of product matching recommendations. And then I'd love to work with any of the kind of educational institutions that have cannabis programs. I know Castleton has a good one, UVM has a good one, to develop this, bud tender / physician training that could be used to just help anyone who's interacting with medical registry patients, help guide them about cannabis dosing, modes of administration, kind of just the basic science around it, so that people don't have to do this on their own. I mean, it's a challenge for everyone. And that's it. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And let's see. Am I back?
Nope.
Almost.
Okay.
We can still see your screen.
You can still see my screen. Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
How's that?
There you go.
I mean, you never left, but we could just still see your screen.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would love to get public comment on this at the appropriate time at the end of this meeting, if we missed anything or if there's any objections or modifications. But for now, Julie, Kyle, are there things that you'd like to see changed in that?
Not changed, no.
No.
When you were talking, actually, I was thinking back to the listening sessions that we did last summer. And a lot of what's in there really encapsulate some of the things that we heard. And then I just wanted to thank our intern who did a lot of that research, Grace Labella from Castleton, from the VTSU Castleton program. So I appreciate her work on this.
Yeah, likewise. I think it's great that we've been able to kind of coalesce around similar thoughts and a trajectory on the future of the medical program. And now we're going to put it in the hands of the legislature and hope that we can continue to have those conversations moving forward in a positive way. And to thank you to everybody who's with us today that we're at these 4 listening sessions, and to all the folks that have talked to us about the medical program, even outside of those listening sessions. I think it's been incredibly valuable, whether or not you agree with the recommendation or not.
Yeah, and it's something that I said at every one of those meetings is, these are recommendations that the board feels are valuable and sets a path towards making the medical program solvent and making sure that patients don't lose access to products and services. But there's no real consensus on the best path forward. And, if this does become a bill, there will be plenty of opportunity for anyone who feels differently than we do to express those concerns directly to the people that have discretion over these decisions. And I would also just thank Grace Labella, if she's listening, also our intern that did just a tremendous amount of work to help us get to this point. So, all right. If there's nothing else, let's keep going down the agenda. We're gonna look at or continue our discussion and hopefully vote on a seasonal closure for new outdoor and mixed use cultivator license applications. We've done this in the past, and the rationale behind this, as we stated at our last meeting and prior meetings, really is that if you look at the numbers, it takes us roughly 90 days from the time a new application is submitted, to review it, schedule the site, meeting, get the kind of fire safety boxes checked, et cetera, to the time that we issue that license. And, just given our growing season here in Vermont, we can't be issuing licenses at a time when the person receiving it won't be able to use it. And there's no legal protection to growing cannabis prior to getting your license. There's nothing about a pending application that helps you if law enforcement or other people are coming to your property and asking, why do you have, 1,000 square feet of cannabis growing? And so last year we did seasonally close for about 6 months or 7 months the window to apply for a new outdoor mixed tier license. And I think, the logic holds true again this year that we should do the same thing.
And we are
So
using slightly different dates, correct, this time, because it's meant to align with the new pre-qualification process, right?
That's right. And it's also meant to shift the closure date a little bit earlier, so that we can ensure that people are licensed before they start their grow.
Great. Well, are we ready to vote on this? Is there any discussion that we want to have before a motion?
I'm good.
No?
The
Okay.
only,
Well,
the only proposal I wanted to offer to the board is to vote on this in a way that it remains consistent moving forward year after year, so you don't have to do this every year unless you want to change the date. So the proposal is to close it each year on March 1st and reopen it on
Okay.
November 1st.
okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Is there a motion for that?
Based upon the board's authority to open and close acceptance periods for applications as set out in Rule 1.10, I move that the board hold closed the outdoor and mixed tier cultivation license application window annually from March 1st to November 1st.
There's a
Second.
Any last discussion? No?
Nope.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Keep going down the list. This is our last regular meeting of the adopted regular meeting schedule. So we need a new one. And Bryn, you sent around some proposed dates yesterday. Should we just say
Yeah.
them or?
Yep, I'm happy
Flat.
to go through the list, and then if the board votes to approve the schedule, then we will get these dates posted on the website straight away so people can plan. But in an effort to achieve consistency here also, we're proposing to keep the last Wednesday of the month at 1 o'clock as the board meeting schedule for the next 6 months. So this is a little bit of a departure from what we did last year during the legislative session. But just given that we were trying to keep consistent our public meeting times, both for our regulated community and those stakeholders who tune into the sessions, as well as our staff, the proposal is to have the next 6 board meetings be on the last Wednesday of the month. So those dates are January 31st, February 28th, March 27th, April 24th, May 29th, and June 22nd. So again, if the board chooses to adopt that schedule, we'll get it posted on the website so people know when those board meeting dates will be for the next 6 months.
Does that sound pretty much all right with everyone? Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the regular meeting schedule?
I move that the CCB approve a regular meeting schedule of the last Wednesday of the month, beginning January 2024 through June 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Why don't we shift to the executive director report?
So here is your executive director report for the month of December. Starting out with our public engagement sessions since the last meeting in November. As the chair mentioned at the outset, we had another medical program study committee meeting, the last one of the series of 4 this month. And also on December 13th, we had a networking event on the pre-qualification process, which is now going to apply for all individuals who are applying for a new cannabis establishment license. Those links are live in this report, so it'll take you right to the recording of those sessions once this report is posted on the website. And our upcoming public engagement, the next one will be also in December on the 29th, will be our lab testing requirements overview. So this will be a review of the new 2 guidance documents that staff has been working on to provide a narrative of what the lab testing requirements are, what the action limits and parameters are, and also sort of our one-pager that's a summary document. So quite a bit of good information in there about lab testing requirements. That includes some new information on the terpene cap and also homogeneity testing. So that'll be an important event for folks to tune into, so they can ask questions at the event, or they can just review the live recording or review the recording if they can't make it live. So that'll be December 29th at 10 a.m. And on that note, these are the 2 guidance documents that were finalized by staff in the last couple of weeks. The little photo on the left there is just the front page of the narrative format of the laboratory testing guidance. And then one on the right is our sort of one-page summative document that tries to give a little bit more of a visual picture of what is required based on the product type. So a lot of information is squished onto that one page. And it also provides links to the full format narrative documents that provide additional guidance on all of the testing requirements. So definitely check those out. They're posted on the guidance page of the Cannabis Control Board's website, as with all of our other numerous guidance documents. Okay, I'll move on to our licensing data. Starting with our number of issued cultivation licenses. You can see that we've got, as always, the majority of our licensees fall within that small cultivator tier 1, outdoor, mixed, and indoor. And then just some summary numbers there on the right that show that we're still primarily issuing licenses to people who are growing entirely outside. Just under 120 mixed cultivation licenses and 120 indoor licenses.
Are these active licenses or all issued from the beginning? So if folks didn't renew, are they included in these numbers or no?
Anybody who has relinquished their license should not be included in these numbers. So these should all be licenses that have been issued and are active in our system.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to manufacturers. Here's our numbers of manufacturers this month. Tier 2 continues to be our largest category here. And here are the numbers of issued licenses of other types. So we're up to 72 retailers across the state. And the other numbers I think have remained the same since the last meeting. And then here we get into our number of cultivation renewals by type and tier. So these renewal numbers, we don't have a report that demonstrates this yet, but we are receiving and processing renewals basically on schedule. There's no type of cultivation among the indoor, mixed, or outdoor that's sort of not renewing along the trajectory that they should be. So these numbers are proportional essentially to the initial issuances. And other renewals by type and tier. You can see these are still pretty small numbers. Given that these are licenses that we didn't begin issuing until later in the year. And we anticipate that these renewals will grow with time as our staff sort of catch up with all of the renewals that we have in the queue. And this slide sort of summarizes all of the renewals that we've got in process. So you can see most of these are cultivation, but we've got a bunch of wholesale, retail, and manufacturing renewals that are sort of in process. Total of 156 renewal applications that staff is working on processing as of today. So as we're looking at renewals, where staff is trying to give the board a little bit of a picture of what is happening upon renewal. So the next few slides sort of look specifically at cultivation licenses and manufacturing licenses, because those are the two categories of license where you can keep your license type but change within that license type. So you can, if you're a cultivator or a manufacturer, you can change your tier. And if you are a cultivator, you can also change your type. You can move from a mixed to an outdoor or whatever. So these next few slides just sort of pull that subset of licensees out and look at what they're doing when they renew. So you can see that 80% of our cultivators and manufacturers that have renewed so far, so these are just people who have gotten their renewal issued already, are not changing either their tier or their type. They're just staying where they are. But 14% are changing their tier. They're either moving up a tier or down a tier. And 6% are changing their type. So that applies specifically to cultivators. They are moving from either an outdoor or mixed to an indoor, or they're shuffling between those different types of cultivation license.
That 14%, is there a trend in moving up or down?
It's funny you should ask.
Great segue.
That is actually this slide.
Oh.
So the tier change upon renewal, just for those folks who are changing their tier, this is the breakdown. So most of them are moving up and a few of them are dropping down. So those are the actual numbers. Those aren't percentages there. But you can just see from the pie that the vast majority of them are moving up.
Is it mostly like tier 1 to tier 2, or is it all over the board? Like, is it consistent?
I think that every single one has been a move up one. I don't think anybody has moved up more than one level. And once those numbers increase, like our numbers of renewals, we can dig down a little bit more into there to give you some more information. And then this is just taking that 6% of folks who are changing their license type. This is the breakdown of what's happening there. So 63% mostly are outdoor cultivators are moving to a mixed cultivation type of license. But then a quarter of them are moving actually from indoor to mixed, which I think is probably great news for the board. And then a smaller number is moving from a mixed license type to just a fully outdoor license type. So interesting to note that no one is moving inside. Okay. That one. So I'll move on, unless there are any other questions about those renewals, I'll move on to our retail locations list. Always an exciting table, this one. So this is areas of density, and we've changed this to now encompass every municipality that has 2 or more licensed retail locations in their borders. And this is now also, the list is now alphabetical, 2 pages because it's much longer. But there's no change to this list since our November meeting. So we've still got Burlington as our area of the greatest density, and I believe it's Morrisville, the second greatest density, with Rutland coming up behind. With 3 who are licensed and 2 in the queue.
I mean, I think as long as we have the opt-in, we're going to see clusters right, of retailers in certain areas, as long as towns have to opt in. I am starting to worry a little bit about how many retailers we have overall. I don't think we have good data on what the limit is or how many we need to have, or it just seems like we have quite a few. So that's something I'm watching.
Yeah, I mean, I think our model estimated that we needed a certain amount to stay, relatively stable, but, yeah, just reminding folks, we don't really have the statutory authority to close.
Yeah.
Based on that alone, on geographical location, is entrepreneurial interest is really driving that, to just be cognizant of those cluster areas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a little nervous about us kind of dictating that the status quo is going to become the permanent status, and then what that does to the value of the existing licenses, and whether, people just want to hang on to them, even if they're not operating potentially. Just because there wouldn't be any more issue. To me, I don't know. I mean, to me, this feels like the legislature should step in if they have real concerns about these areas of density, and on our end of things, continue to publish this list and maybe add it to the pre-qualification process, where it's really just like, are you sure you want to enter into Burlington, or Waitsfield or somewhere else, do you really have a plan to kind of be economically viable in the long run? So I don't know. And potentially, just a third thing is, I feel like some towns, it's just fallen off their radar that they need to opt in, and I don't know, we got a town meeting day coming up in March. It feels like maybe we can do some outreach to the league, or other just, zoning administrators or whoever else, the select boards, talk to them about whether they want this, in their municipalities. Because it does feel like, there's a couple areas in the state that could benefit, either because they have no legal cannabis stores for miles and miles. They just have the population centers to support a cannabis store. So I don't know.
I mean, yeah, a huge swath of 89 between Barry and White River Junction, there's like one option, and that's in Randolph.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in probably our biggest economic center, right, we have 10, well, we will have at some point 13 in Burlington, but there's none in South Burlington or Williston, or the other places where people shop, because those towns haven't opted in. And I would say too that, prospective retailers who want to operate in those places, or residents, they also, like you mentioned, town meeting day, Pepper, they have the ability to go to their town and advocate for that to be on the ballot. So
Yeah,
it's important to raise that now. Thank you.
all right.
So I didn't include the map this week or this month because there's no change since the last board meeting. So I'm going to move now into the licensees that have confirmed that they are not renewing their license. So this is sort of a summary of license relinquishments as of, I think that was Monday. So we've had an increase in this number. So this is a subset right here. So the total on this page is 36. So we had 29 relinquishments as of our November meeting. So that's an increase of 7 since the last board meeting. And since we've started tracking this data, we're seeing some consistency in the number of relinquishments that we're getting. So it's around 1.5 license relinquishments per week at this point. And we will continue to track that as we identify folks that are not renewing. And we'll give you some more information about that. But just as a little bit of a counterpoint here, we're seeing some consistency in how many new applications we're getting each week. And it's a little bit less. So this is just from the last board meeting. We've gotten 4 new initial license applications since the last meeting. And there's some consistency there too, that we're getting a handful every month. So handful of loss and a handful of gain But we'll, as we move forward, we'll continue to track those numbers and see, if it's a wash or if we're losing more than we're gaining. So as for the rationale for people relinquishing their license, here's just some updated numbers on the reasons. So just as a reminder, our compliance, our field agents are conducting sort of exit interviews with folks who are either letting their license expire or they are actively giving up their license at some point during their licensed year. And the sort of rationale listed on the left there, we've got the majority of folks citing personal reasons for relinquishing their license, but the number of other reasons that is growing to some extent. So marketing, advertising, site issues are growing. As we
What would a
conduct more
site issue be?
interviews. That the site that they have for growing or for conducting their business is not adequate in some way for their business.
And against like multiple reasons, correct?
That's correct. So these are not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
And then there's some effort to dig down a little bit in this slide, which shows that, and this is I think a significant difference from last month, that we've have more people identifying the actual costs associated with participating in the industry as being a factor that contributed to their decision to relinquish their license, and specifically the cost of banking, insurance, and the cost of their license. And we also had a few folks indicate that their ability to comply with the regulations factored into their decision as well. At this point, with this subset of data that we have, which is still remains pretty small, the majority of those reasons, or the significant reasons, is personal. Okay, I'll move on. So here's our chart on the licensed canopy capacity, square footage of licensed canopy capacity that we have over time. So we're remaining pretty steady, a little bit of a drop in outdoor and a little bit of a growth in indoor. Again, that trend is continuing, pretty minor, but you can see over the last couple of months, there's been a drop in our outdoor canopy capacity and a little bit of growth just in the last month of our indoor, since we had a more significant drop between October and November. So basically pretty steady here. And our capacity, our utilization of that capacity is also remaining pretty steady. So just as a reminder, this utilization percentage is really based on a subset of our licensees. So we're looking at approximately just under 15% of our licensees to create this utilization percentage. So I think our total number that we've surveyed for this percentage is just under 160 licensees. So that's, again, just under 15% for our licensees. We're collecting this data from, so we're making a little bit of a projection here. But this is, again, a pretty steady number. 45% utilization of our indoor canopy is a 2% increase from last month. And the 74% utilization of our outdoor capacity is a 1% drop since last month. So pretty steady numbers, but looks like our indoor utilization is climbing a little bit, which makes sense given the time of year that it is.
As a reminder for folks, this is total canopy, not flowering canopy.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions about that, or I'll move on to our compliance?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we've got a slide on compliance data summarized here. It's a little bit of a short month since we're not quite at the end of December. So I think this is really representative of more like 3 weeks as opposed to 4. So only 10 new complaints received. I think that's indicative of the short cycle, and also the fact that I think that Thanksgiving fell within the cycle, maybe not. Anyway, there might have been a little period of time where people were feeling gracious and not complaining too much. 4 total new investigations. Summary of those is below: operating without a license, compliance with fire safety regulations, compliance with employee ID card requirements, and then 1 I'm summarizing as general compliance with the requirements of maintaining a license. Multiple issues in there. The field staff has observed product destruction due to license relinquishments for 2 licensees. Staff have issued 5 notices of violation since the last board meeting, and the grounds for which are summarized below. One was for inversion, 1 was for unlicensed retail sales, 1 was for failure to comply with fire safety regulations, and then 2 were for operating without a license, but for different reasons. 1 was for a failure to renew upon the license expiration, and 1 was for a transition of business ownership without a license renewal. And then lastly, 2 corrective action plans have been issued since the last board meeting. Reasons for those are below. 1 was for compliance with fire safety requirements. 1 was for compliance with insurance requirements. And both of those corrective action plans were sort of part and parcel of the notice of violation. So those aren't distinct from the issues in the above section. Okay, and so then that concludes my report prior to the staff recommendations for licensure. And so I think the next thing on the board meeting agenda, we should probably do that prior to going into our staff recommendations for licensure.
Okay. Is that all right with everyone?
Mhm.
Okay, so it's a deliberative session. Is there a motion to enter a deliberative session?
I move that the board enter into deliberative session.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have this on the calendar for 20 minutes. So we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, but so why don't we just say 2:10? Does that sound about right to everyone?
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
I'm gonna
And
pause.
Kelsey,
I'm
oh,
gonna interrupt.
sorry.
I'm sorry, just for a moment, and just note that that agenda is published actually prior to the deliberative session. There was going to be a discussion of confirmation of a notice of violation with immediate effect. And we can swap the order of those 2 if you'd like, but we don't have to.
Oh, no, that's fine. Sorry. No, I didn't scroll up far enough on the agenda. Sorry. No, why don't we, so Gabe, maybe you can help us. There's been a motion and a second to enter deliberative or a vote to enter. Can we pause that, or should we just do that now and then switch the agenda items?
The proponent could withdraw the motion, and if that were done, we could just move on to in the order you prefer.
I withdraw
Okay.
my motion.
Okay.
Kind of set you up there.
It's very helpful.
Sorry about
Thank
that.
you.
No, that was poor reading on my part. Sorry. No, so confirmation or confirmed notice of violation with immediate effect is next on the agenda. Brenda, do you want to walk us through that?
Sure thing. Sorry, I didn't notice that until it was too late. Maybe I should just let you go. All right. So I think this is a sort of novel issue before the board. Our rule 4, I think it's 4.10, requires that the board confirm a notice of violation with immediate effect. So what I'm going to do now is just generally describe a notice of violation that has been issued for the board to take a vote on whether or not to confirm that notice of violation with immediate effect. So the board issued a license to a business with shared ownership between 2 principals in 2022. And prior to the date that that license expired, the board received information that the ownership of that business had changed hands. And the new ownership of the business has not been licensed by the board in any capacity. So the original authorized principals of the business had managerial control over the business, did sell the business and hand over operational control to individuals that are not authorized to own or operate a cannabis establishment in Vermont. That is sort of the factual basis for the notice of violation. The board has the authority under 7 VSA 881 is actually the statute 7 VSA 881 requires that the board scrutinize the ownership of cannabis establishments prior to giving them a license or allowing them to operate. And also board rule 1.17 requires, among other things, that a licensee may not consummate the change of control of their license before the board approves their license renewal application. So the notice of violation contemplates that the parties committed 2 violations: operating without all required permits, board approvals, certificates, registrations, and/or licenses pursuant to Rule 4.5.1A, and attempting to change control of the license without prior approval of the board pursuant to Rule 1.17. And that's actually also found under Rule 4.5.1H. So the staff is finding that these violations pose an imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare because unauthorized commercial cannabis activity by an unlicensed corporation and individual undermines the board's ability to track cannabis products, ensure the quality and safety of those products, ensure that the security of cannabis products, and to prevent their diversion, and also to assess the backgrounds of individuals who are engaged in cannabis commerce. Also inhibits the board's ability to enforce statutory requirements and restrictions concerning the ownership and control of a cannabis establishment, and to hold accountable persons who may violate statutes and rules that are governing the cannabis industry in Vermont. So the notice of violation contemplates both a corrective action plan and an order to cease and desist. So that cease and desist order contemplates that the parties shall immediately suspend all license activities pending further order of the board. And then the corrective action plan identifies a number of documents and information to provide immediately to the Cannabis Control Board. And as I mentioned at the outset, pursuant to Rule 4.10, if there's an administrative penalty that's imposed with immediate effect, the administrative penalty or corrective action plan shall not take effect until the conclusion of the process outlined in Rule 4.10. And part of that process is that the board confirm the notice of violation and penalty within 7 days of its issuance. That is what staff is asking for the board to do at this point.
Okay. And the penalties that take effect immediately are the cease and desist, not any sort of administrative fine or penalty, right? It's the cease and desist portion.
That's correct. The portion of the notice that takes immediate effect is the cease and desist order, and any contemplated penalty is not does not take immediate effect, but there's a process by which that penalty goes into effect.
When there's a cease and desist, what happens to the product in that licensee's possession?
So the notice of violation contemplates that the owner of the business shall retain possession of all cannabis and cannabis products pursuant to a corrective action plan. There's some details in that corrective action plan about providing the board with a full accounting of what cannabis and cannabis products are in their possession and where they are.
Okay, thank you.
And I know we were talking in generalities here, but if we confirm this notice of violation with immediate effect, that then becomes a public document, correct?
Yes, correct. That's right.
Okay. Okay. Of the board?
I'm sorry,
confirm.
Pepper, we missed one bit of what you said.
Okay. How do we go about confirming this? Is it just a vote of the board?
That's right.
Okay.
I think
And
that
does
we
someone-
have,
Does someone have a motion to do so?
I move to confirm the notice of violation with immediate effect issued December 13th to Oho Cannabis Wholesale and Vermont Roots Collective.
Second.
Any last discussion before we vote? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that, Bryn. And I think next we have our scheduled deliberative session. And I think we need to re-vote on that as we withdrew the last one.
Move that the board enter into deliberative session.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well, this time around, it looks like we're a little bit closer to being on this anticipated schedule. Why don't, Kelsey, we'll aim to come back at 20 after 2.
Sounds good.
Okay. I will join the All right, Kelsey, I think we are ready to get back into this. Everyone good?
Yep.
All right. So again, James Pepper, Chair of the Cannabis Control Board in Vermont. Today's Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. It's 2:28 p.m. and we have exited our deliberative session. Just want to say a few notes about that. We have two licensees, two applicants that are seeking renewal that have outstanding issues. We needed to hear about them and kind of hear what the plan is for bringing them into compliance. We didn't take any action. We just discussed a possible path. Gabe, I know there's probably some confusion about deliberative sessions and versus executive sessions. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just kind of clarifying the distinction or kind of what we did there.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. And I realize we might have confused the heck out of everybody by interchanging the terms executive and deliberative in terms of the reasons for private sessions. An executive session is familiar to most people who follow open meetings that set out, there are reasons for an executive session set out in 1 VSA 312 and 313. These are things like discussion of trade secrets, personal information, other matters deemed confidential by law, which under our section 901A of Title VII have a great deal to do with license applications as well. The Cannabis Control Board, like a lot of administrative agencies, has functions that are not strictly executive in terms of implementing the laws, but also has quasi-judicial functions, meaning that in some cases when somebody has legal rights or due process rights, those folks can be entitled to hearings before the same body, where the body isn't making general policy, but instead determining their individual legal rights and obligations in a particular set of facts and circumstances. In many cases, those hearings will have yet to occur, and speaking of them publicly could be prejudicial to the people involved or unfair. And so a body like this one is permitted to go into deliberative session to carry on deliberations in connection with quasi-judicial proceedings only. So that means there's a definite party involved. It's not a discussion of general policy. And in each of those cases, it's important to understand that ultimately the transparency to the public is almost total. The administrative record, when the matter is concluded, is a public record. Any testimony taken is public. And of course, in each of these contested cases, the board is obligated, if it makes a decision adverse to a party, to explain its reasons in writing in a published decision that is also public and subject to judicial review. So there are no secrets, really. This is sort of deliberation, something that would occur in mid-course matters that can end in a hearing or that have had a hearing. So that's why you see that occurring.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, thank you. I know that this is kind of a relatively new concept, but we're also moving into a relatively new phase of our work where we have a number of licensees and we're starting our renewal processes and people have outstanding issues. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Bryn, I think next would be to review the staff recommendations and for us to vote on those.
Okay. So here on the next several slides are CCB staff's recommendations for licensure. So all of the applicants on the following slides have demonstrated compliance with the requirements for their license contained in board rule and statute, with one outstanding conditional recommendation, which you'll find on the last slide. So starting out with staff recommendations for initial licensure. So these are two businesses that staff is recommending to the board for approval of their initial license. So we've got one tier 1 small cultivator and one retailer. that staff is recommending for approval. And I would just note that under priority status, where we have the word approved, those are approved social equity applicants. Typically we say social equity there, but we're mixing things up today. The second slide is staff recommendations for license renewal. So we've got 2 full slides, I think, of recommendations for license renewal. I'll leave each slide up on the screen for a couple of moments. And again, note that this report will be published to the website after the board meeting, so folks can go and check it on the website. Here's the second page, and I apologize, but there are 3 pages, so there's another following. Right. And the last slide here is a recommendation for renewal of a license contingent upon CB staff issuing directives to the licensee pursuant to paragraph D of that licensee's active corrective action plan. So another recommendation for approval of a renewal contingent upon some action on behalf of the board. There you have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
Okay, any questions for Bryn?
Nope.
All right, well, is there a motion to approve the staff recommendations?
I move that the board accept each of these recommendations as presented by staff in this meeting.
A second.
Any final discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Let's go to public comment. Try and handle this the same way we always did. We'll start with people that joined via the video. If you join via video, you can raise your virtual hand if you'd like to make a public comment. And then we will move to people that join via phone. And since I'm offsite, I can see the list here. So I'll just go ahead and Dave Silberman.
Thank you, Chair. So we're now solid 14, 15 months into the market. And I think one of the things that has been very frustrating to a lot of market participants is a lack of market data. I note that in a lot of regulated states, there is a plethora of data put out by their regulatory agencies about the market. In particular, data around wholesale transfer pricing across categories is something that is very valuable to all market participants, and will and is something that I just see a lot of clamoring for, both at the retail level and the cultivation level. Retail sales data by category in particular would be great to see, kind of what consumers are wanting, what they're buying, and overall market data, like what the sales are, and what the tax revenues are. We get tax revenue from the Agency of Administration, but we only get the excise tax revenue, so we're not seeing all the sales because that's not applied to devices, it's not applied to CBD products. So we don't really know what the market is doing. We can only guess based on very, very limited data, and we'd really like your help. And especially in a sort of with the position that the board has taken of, many of the things that licensees have been asking for in terms of legal changes, your position has of late been that's for the market, that's for the regulated industry to advocate for. It's very hard to advocate without the data. And so look, I know that, with your inventory tracking system still in its infancy, it's hard to pull data, but it's been a while now. And I think you guys really need to focus on that and produce that data for the market. It would be super helpful. And then just on a little bit of a legal nitpick, similar to what Gabe was talking about. Last week you took a adverse action on an application, and I don't recall seeing any reasoning put out on that. And I think, as a lawyer practicing in this field, it would be really helpful to understand your decisions and what's driving them. It would help us guide clients in the future. So the more you could tell us about the decisions you make, the more information you could put out there on why you make the decisions you do, I think just the better the experience will be for everyone, including the licensing staff, because we'll be able to address things proactively. So that's all. Thank you very much for paying attention.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Next is Jeffrey, and I would just remind everyone who's potentially commenting or in the meeting that I would also very much appreciate any thoughts or comments on the medical program recommendations as well. But Jeffrey.
Thanks for raising that, Chair. Thanks for calling on me. Hello, everybody. Thanks for that presentation on the recommendations, Chair. We intend to provide some feedback within the input period, which I believe sunsets on the 31st, everybody. So the 31st of this month is the allotment, everybody, for input for the medical recommendations. Guys, they should be on your website, right? If they're not already.
We'll get them up. I think I was making some tweaks to them, so we will get them up. Yeah.
Terrific. And I just had a question for Bryn, the executive director. I was wondering, did you guys give a total license figure this week? I'm sorry if I missed that in your executive report. I know that's going to be published. I wasn't sure if you had shared that figure. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
You mean total, like total or new?
Yeah, I thought on a monthly basis, there is reported a total adult use licensed figure. I believe last week it was like, or last month it was like 548. Anyway, I was wondering.
I think this month you might have to do some math. You might have to do some addition this month.
It's broken out. I think you had it, but it was just broken out by license type, not just total number of licenses.
Got it.
Yeah.
No problem. We can add. I appreciate that.
All right. Anyone else who joined via video link, please, and you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your virtual hand. And if you've joined by phone, you can hit *6 to unmute if you'd like to make a public comment. Looks like we had a phone on mute, 7642.
Yeah, hi, this is Eli from Vermont, Awana. I just wanted to thank you all for the public comment and just piggyback on what I heard from Dave Silverman's point about the data being public. The alternative is that there is a whole consulting sector out there that tries their best to estimate this. A lot of the time this data is false, and misleading stuff that's out there. There's just a lot of scams out there of people trying to predict things, and the state putting this out would not only be incredibly beneficial to us, but other states trying to look at this and actually just having accurate information out there about the market and closing off the possibility of it being privatized and people selling false data about the Vermont market. So I just wanted to piggyback on that, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Eli. Amelia.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the medical recommendations really quickly. I understand the logic behind lowering the medical license fee to $10,000 from $25,000, and introducing that as kind of a supplemental license for existing adult use retailers. I think that's a great idea. I do worry that we're looking at lowering a fee for a license type that is vertically integrated and introducing a license type for adult use that is not. And I just worry that there isn't really much incentivization outside of the want to help medical patients for retailers to join that program. And so I would just like to see that, whether that be in sort of a discounted licensing fee for the first year, or, some sort of incentivization to really make retailers want to be a part of this, whatever we're going to call it, supplemental medical licensing program. Because really, there is a big, it is a big deal that the existing medical dispensaries licensing fee will be lowered by $15,000. But there isn't much incentive for adult use retailers to want to spend that additional $10,000 on top of whatever else they might have to spend to ensure patient privacy. So yeah, that was just my only thought looking at those recommendations, is I would love to see some sort of incentivization for adult use retailers to join this program outside of the goodness of their hearts, which I know a lot of them do have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia. Anyone else for public comment? Again, it's *6 to unmute if you join by phone. Otherwise, you can raise your virtual hand and I'll try my best to call on you in the order. No? Okay. I'll close the public comment window. I appreciate all the feedback and all the comments. I think, Dave, to your point about the executive sessions and adverse actions, that the board did we published the written decisions from the last month's deliberative session, so those are public and available. We are working on presenting a lot of the data that I think was asked for at this meeting. We needed to kind of work out a few bugs with our inventory tracking transfers. Now that those have been worked out, we're working towards publishing the exact data that you want. So I think that's coming. And I think if I was understanding, Amelia, your point correctly, I mean, I don't want to see any fee for getting that medical endorsement, because I know that there's going to be costs to, jumping through those additional hoops to protect patient privacy, have access to unique products or specialty products. But, the legislature may not go for that. And I think in addition to that, they should just lower the standalone dispensary fee. This would be two separate licenses, essentially. One would be an endorsement, one would be the existing kind of dispensary license that's vertically integrated. So I want them to do both. But we'll see what happens legislatively. Julie, Kyle, anything else you wanted to say? This is our last meeting of the year.
Boy, that suddenly seems like a lot of pressure. Like last meeting of the year.
I would just piggyback really quickly on your statements around data. I think we are cognizant that data is super important in decision making, both from our side of the fence, but also from a business perspective as well. I know that we're still in development there. I feel like, from my understanding, we're at like this penultimate moment. We're really close. We've got to enter enough data into the system to get a really accurate representation of where the market truly is. And that'll be coming in the new year. I don't have a good date for it yet, but stay tuned. We will have something live in public, front facing, for anybody, whether it's a business or an interested party, consumer, non-consumer, whatever you want to call them.
I wouldn't want people to rely on data that wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Right.
We got to get enough data entered into our system for it to be truly accurate. And I think we're close.
Great. Well, I really, all I would say is I appreciate everyone who joins these meetings regularly, who kind of keeps an eye on what we're doing with our rules, everyone who's kind of risking a lot of their personal capital, personal, time and effort to be a part of this regulated community. I think we are offering an incredible service to Vermonters and the people that come to visit our state. And, I just appreciate everyone kind of sticking with us. So thank you. And I will adjourn the meeting.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.